So let's start with a word of prayer, please. What a blessing, oh God, it is for us to gather together and to share the good news of the gospel, to learn more about the journey of Christ in the Holy Week experience, to understand much more about it's just not a week for us to take off or a week to celebrate with family, but a week in which we treasure, because this is the week that Jesus entered the city of Jerusalem. It's the week in which he died and rose again. So bless us, O God, as we journey through some of that today. For it's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen. We're going to do a few single Sundays. This morning I want to share with you the way of the cross. There are 14 stops along the way between Jesus when he was convicted condemned, I should say, and his death, and the journey that he took through the streets of Jerusalem. Next week, Larry Wallace will be with us and talk about some archaeological findings in Jerusalem, and that'll be important for us as we prepare for Holy Week. Bill, you're the week after that, correct?
Sure.
And he'll be talking about the illegal trial of Jesus, how there were a number of illegal steps that took place during the trial of Jesus. So these are things to help you prepare for Holy Week. We will not meet Easter Sunday morning, and then I will lead a one Sunday course called the Resurrection Plot. We'll take a deeper investigation as to what the resurrection is, why it took place, and those kind of questions. We'll look at the scriptures regarding that. Well, today, I want to help you to understand a journey that I took back in 2013. My late wife would never want to go to the Holy Land, because she was always afraid of getting shot at. And so she died April of 2012, and in June of 2012, I went to the Holy Land. I would not go without her, but I did this time. And so I spent 10 days there, and with a group from a different presbytery in Nebraska, and had a great time with 23 of us, and really enjoyed ourselves. We went through Educational Opportunities EO was the company that they used. And so it was a very, very good experience. And so one of the parts of the trip, we went obviously to the Sea of Galilee, we went to the Kidron Valley, and we went to all the key sites, Nazareth, Megiddo, we went to Magdala, we took a tour around the Sea of Galilee, we went down the Jordan River Valley, we went to the Dead Sea, we went to a lot of the key Holy Land sites. But one of the things we did do when we were in Jerusalem was take the way of the cross as well. So it was kind of an interesting trip. So it had always been in my heart to go to the Holy Land, to walk where Jesus walked. To imagine it may not be that exact piece of dirt that he walked on, but the fact that he tread where I was going, where he performed miracles, and where he shared his ministry and suffered on his final journey to death. It's a very coveted location in the world. It's an interesting location because at the beginning of time, many nations have tried to war with them because it is on the trade routes between Europe and Africa and Asia. And so there's a key location there in the Holy Land. And so let me just start by saying, let's go through briefly what Holy Week is about. It starts with Palm Sunday. On that Sunday, Jesus entered into Jerusalem on a colt of a donkey, and there's where people wave their palm branches, and that is recorded in all the Gospels. On Monday, then Jesus goes to the temple and clears the temple courts. He overturns the money changers. He upsets the tables of the pigeon sellers, the money changers, because they were profiting from the exchange rate pigeon sellers. Pigeons were commonly sacrifices for the poorest of the poor, and they were cheating them as well. Then on Tuesday, Jesus goes to the Mount of Olives. And there, Judas Iscariot negotiates with the Sanhedrin to betray Jesus. Then on Wednesday, the Bible doesn't really say much about where Jesus may have gone, but we assume he went to Bethany to be with Mary and Martha, and previously Jesus rose Lazarus from the dead. Then Thursday begins the exciting part. The Passover and the Last Supper becomes a somber event and begins to set up for what's going to happen in the future. Jesus goes to an upper room in Jerusalem, prepares the Passover feast with his disciples. There he washes their feet after the Last Supper. Then Jesus returns to the Garden of Gethsemane, to the east side of the old city of Jerusalem, where Jesus prays these great drops of prayer, or great drops of blood. And there is where Judas betrays him. Our focus is going to be on that Friday, the Good Friday. Judas Iscariot betrays him, hates himself, hangs himself. The false accusations and trials. Jesus is sentenced to death. He carries his own cross to Calvary, or Golgotha. He dies on the cross. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea take him down, and after 6 o'clock, the two of them prepare the body with some 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes with clean linens. On Saturday, Jesus is in the tomb. His body's in the tomb. Soldiers are there guarding the tomb entrance. And then obviously Sunday is where Easter comes. The resurrection appears. Jesus is no longer dead, but is now alive. This is the most important, probably, event in the Christian faith. So our time today is going to focus on what happened on that Friday, specifically Jesus' journey from the Antonia fortress to Calvary. Now, how many of you have been to the Holy Land? Just the two of you, okay? So this will be some new things, and please feel free to add if you wish. This is going to be a fun discussion day as well. So Jerusalem, as you see on the picture of your handout, by the way, handout has two-sided. There's also a feedback sheet for you to also complete, since it's a one Sunday event. This is a view of Jerusalem from the east, overlooking the Mount of Olives. You can see both the old city, which is right here, and you can see the dome, and you can see the new city of Jerusalem. See the high rises and the stuff in the background. Okay.
Is the dome of the rock in that picture?
Yes.
There's a little.
Yeah, the dome is right there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I have a closer picture too. So here's a close-up view of the dome. This is again the view from the east city of Jerusalem, the old city. This has been a site of so many conflicts because it's situated between the Mediterranean Sea and the Dead Sea, and Jerusalem is specifically located on a freshwater spring. And that's where that city began through the Canaanites years and years ago. I think it was 4000 BC is when Jerusalem was first established. So, because of the location geographically, you had trade routes. Not only did they use the Mediterranean Sea, but on land they used the trade routes right through the Middle East. And so the patriarchs linked with the northern empires and to Egypt and Africa in the south. So that's where there's a key thing. So Jerusalem is a meeting place, not only for roads, but also for cultures. People will come definitely from east and west and north and south in Jerusalem. Now, let me give you a brief history. I mentioned that it was established about 4000 BC by the Canaanites. In the 1st century BC, Herod the Great made Jerusalem into an important city, became an important capital city for him. He built palaces and fortresses and rebuilt the temple. And that's the Jerusalem that Jesus did in his day on earth. That's the Jerusalem where Jesus was tried and crucified by the Roman rulers. Well, we also have the Jewish revolt, which began in 66 and ended in 70 AD. And that culminated the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple by the Romans. So that may be helpful to you. The Muslims conquered Jerusalem in 638 AD. There was 3 centuries of the Byzantines, gave Jerusalem a new sense of character. The Crusaders came through, wiped out all the Jews and all the Muslims. So I mean, it's been in a warring area for years. And so when you look at certain things, you'll see that looks like it's a new part, and that looks like it's an old part. Yes, they kind of built on top of stuff. If you have a good foundation, why tear out the foundation, just build on it. And so previous civilizations may be covered up with sand and dirt. They would build on that foundation and keep building on top of that one and keep building on top of that one. And so what's called a tell. And so the tell of Megiddo, for example, I think they have found 26 different layers of foundations in that city, because you simply build on top of what's already there. And that's what they also did in Jerusalem. So modern Jerusalem obviously has electricity and cars and buses and sewer systems, and even a part of the old Jerusalem city also has the same. So again, a view from the east. Here, if you look close, you see what's just outside the wall? Cemeteries. Cemeteries. You don't find any dead bodies in the old city of Jerusalem. But you see the Golden Gate, which is closed off. This is the gates that supposedly Jesus, when he returns, will enter the city of Jerusalem through the Golden Gate. And so people who really are into their Messiah coming, they want to be sure that they're buried just outside the Golden Gate. And so that's why there's quite a few above ground coffins and those kind of things there. Cemeteries, there's not a dead body in the old city of Jerusalem. Still in the same eastern location, you see the Temple Mount, the Golden Gate. Legend has it, like I said, this is where Jesus will enter through that Golden Gate. Beautiful time. And in the foreground are the olive trees. Now, you've got to turn on the other side of the old city of Jerusalem. This is now the western side. Remember, we just looked at eastern side, now we're looking at the western side. This is where they have what is called the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall. The Wailing Wall is not actually a part of the temple. Biblical Jerusalem was built on 2 hills, and between them was a valley, and was filled in by debris from the destruction of the previous temples. So they actually made a plaza out of above all the debris. The Western or Wailing Wall is actually a retaining wall that was built by Herod in 20 BC that surrounded the entire eastern hill, which was raised to fill the plateau where the church and the dome is, or the dome on the rock is today. And so it's an elevated plaza that the temple stood at the time of Jesus. Ever since the destruction in the second temple in 70 AD was destroyed, Ever since then, pilgrims have been coming to the Western Wall, or what they call the Wailing Wall. Its cracks are filled with notes of prayer. You see the white in there? Those are prayer notes. When I was there, I put my prayer in one of the crevices. I believe they're removed once a week, and they say they're stored somewhere. So it's kind of fascinating. Had a chance to pray at the wall. It's a very moving experience. There are two portions of the wall, one for men and one for women. Men and women do not mix together at the same time. Now, let's go back to Jerusalem. We're going back on the east side. I just thought if you're trying to hear about the Wailing Wall, that's why I said to share that with you today. Back on the east side of Jerusalem, the old city, you go through the Lion's Gate to get in, and this is typically where Jesus would go in and out of. If he was going to the Mount of Olives or possibly to Bethany, he would go through this gate. Now you can see closely in the wall, there's some newer blocks and some older blocks. I always find it kind of fascinating to take a look at the architecture of things. It's because some of the wall still was the old wall, and some of it had to be rebuilt. It had been destroyed many times before, and so that was rebuilt. And so as we entered the Lion's Gate, we were given a cross, a handheld cross, and this is where we start our journey. Now, the way of the cross involves 14 stations, 14 significant stops, 14 locations on the journey of Christ being convicted and then died, buried, and rose.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
In my memory, which could be very faulty, I seem to remember people talking about the 12 stations of the cross. Is that just a faulty memory, or do some people count only 12 of these stations, or my...
That I don't know. I know that there's a couple of stations that are not recorded in Scripture, so that may be where they came up with 12.
Yeah, I always thought there were 12 too, as
Yeah.
well. I was always.
Say that again loudly.
I always thought there were 12 as well. So I guess that's how you count things, right? Once you count
I guess, yeah. Yeah.
So when you go through here, are you going to tell us which of the two that are recorded in Scripture?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm. Now, you need to understand something, who have not been to the Holy Land, is that Constantine, who was the emperor in the early 300s AD, his mother, Helena, was a Christian. And so one of the things that Helena wanted to be sure is that we preserve the significant religious sites of the Christian faith. And so every one of the things that are significant in the Holy Land are covered up with a church, a convent, a monastery, a religious school, or something to protect the site. So,
Mark?
yes.
Is there a known correlation between the 12 or 14 stations and Jesus with the 12 disciples?
I don't believe so, but it could be.
No, I think that's just a coincidence.
I think so. I think it could be just a coincidence too.
Usually a coincidence.
But I mean, that's a great question. My assumption is where we come up with a 12 is that there's 12 biblical accounts of the way of the cross. And this is going to be the Roman Catholics' view of the cross, his journey to the cross. Now, I know I'm kind of observant of architecture and things. Look at the arch. You can see they build new structures attached to old structures. So that arch is no longer a complete arch, but things continue to be erected. Look closely at the brick or the block. You know, some of it's old and some of it's newer. Again, because of the surrounding environment what has ever happened to the city of Jerusalem is constantly being renewed and reinvigorated. Here's the actual journey of the cross. The way of the cross winds through narrow straits of Jerusalem. It starts with number 1, the Antonia Fortress, and it goes through to number 14, which is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And so stop 10 through 14 are in that location. So it's not a straight shot, but there's a significant bend or two in the journey. And you notice the further west you go, or to your left, the more stops there are, because Jesus kind of wears out. Okay? So these are significant sites, events, locations where Jesus went to the cross. The first one, the Praetorium in the Antonia Fortress, just inside Lion's Gate, just close to the Temple Mount, is the fortress. It was the headquarters of the Roman garrison in Jerusalem. It's where Jesus was tried by Pontius Pilate. It's where he was condemned to death. The basement of this is the convent of the Sisters of Sion. So like I said, it's religious sites. They will go ahead and put structures over to preserve it. Okay, and this one is a convent. The remains of the Roman pavement is in their basement. This is the Antonia Fortress flooring.
And are you allowed to, then, when you can actually see that, or do you have to make special arrangements to go see that? maybe?
This one you can see. There's some of these stops along the way that we were not able to go into. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Can you go back to the slide before this?
Yes.
Okay, you see how you have that map lined out?
Mhm.
Is there a map like that for the path that was taken when they brought, in the Old Testament, the Ark of the Covenant from, remember when Uzzah fell, and he was stricken dead because he was trying to balance out the ark, and the oxen was a little bit stumbled. Okay, is there a diagram? Do you know where the pit stops were that they came a long way before it was finally laid out? What is it, Edom or whatever his name was?
I would suppose so.
Okay.
You should check online to see.
Okay,
Would be my suggestion. That's where I got this map from.
all right, okay.
Yeah.
I know it's the Old Testament, I know
Yes.
this is the New Testament, but I
Correct.
was reading that last night, and I was questioning Ron, and I was thinking, it would be interesting to have a
Sure.
map like that of where the Ark of the
My
Covenant.
assumption is just the Bible according to Google. See what may be there.
Reverend Dr. Google.
Reverend Dr. Google. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Now you notice.
Google says there's 14 stations.
So somebody must be right.
It's not Google.
Yeah.
YouTube says
Since
it
we're
now.
talking about Google,
Yeah. You'll notice too that the pavement is etched. The etching is because when they had the horses, they didn't want the horses to stumble. And to be sure that it prevented slipping on the hooves. So it was etched. And so now this is a part of their school, the convent school. Michael was our guide. He's a Palestinian. And so there's some places we could easily get to. There are other places that we could not. And so depending upon whether you have a Jewish guide or a Palestinian guide, that does make a difference. I think I really enjoy the Palestinian guide because we got to places that the Jewish guide would not go to
And why would the Jewish guy not go there?
because of restrictions.
From
And
who?
was that government restrictions or?
East Bank, West Bank was some of it,
Political.
and some of it was political, some of it was religious.
But that's more than the 14 stations of the cross. Are you referring to the 14 stations?
No, I'm referring to, simply, we had a guide.
In general.
And our guide was for the whole 10, 11 days. Yeah. And so simply to share with you again, what happens on the way to the cross is that you find these kind of sites. You see the wall behind Michael. You see the arch in the wall. It's fascinating to where you could tell that there was some archway, some previous civilization.
Yeah.
Now you notice you also have sewers and manhole covers because it's built on top of other things. You see newer stonework arches. So again, this is kind of the fascination because so many people have conquered so much. This has been there for so many years
Yes.
that they keep adding to or building up. So this is the first stop. This is where Jesus was scourged. This is where Jesus began bearing his cross. The second station is the Franciscan Chapel of Condemnation, and it's where we're unable to enter that chapel because there was something going on, we could not enter it. But Jesus was given his cross at that chapel.
So are you saying, that there's a possibility to go in there? It's just that
I
when you
don't
were there,
know.
there was something.
Yeah, I don't know, but some of them we did go into, some of them we didn't. And many of them, if we went into, you couldn't take pictures. So that was the other thing. So,
They said you couldn't take pictures.
yeah, and I'll show you one that I did, and it didn't turn out very well, but.
Serves your darn right.
So if you remember the map of the way of the cross, that first long straight street, this is that street. Now you notice that there's steps going up. Well, when Jesus was around, there were no steps,
That's my, yeah.
but he begins to ascend to Golgotha, right, to the cross. The third station is the Armenian Catholic Church, is where Jesus falls under the weight of the cross his first time. So you can see the high relief above the entrance of this place. Also notice the door, the bronze or metal door, has the Alpha and the Omega next to the entrance. Jesus is the beginning and the end. That's the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet.
Who did that? When, I mean, how long is, who did that? The Alpha and Omega sign?
I suppose it was done by the Armenians,
Okay.
be my assumption, yeah. I couldn't get a picture of the name of the church and the door in the same picture without you not reading, and I like more close-ups,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Now, was the Armenian church there when Christ had the hand was crossed through that area?
That I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't believe so
It
either.
was not a Catholic church when.
Yeah, there
Because
wouldn't
there
have been
wouldn't be a-
Catholic.
There was only one church, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there wasn't any then.
The churches,
Right.
the churches didn't come for
Yeah.
at least.
May not have
two
been in
decades
Armenia.
after
So this was
that.
built-
Right. Yeah, we know that the Holy Church of the Holy Sepulchre, you have Armenians, you have Greek Orthodox, you have Catholics,
Yeah.
and you have the Coptics.
Yeah.
So you have 4 different groups. Yeah.
In there now or?
Now, yes.
Now, okay.
Yeah.
There was an interesting documentary on that, and things are falling apart, and things need to be repaired, but these four groups that are tasked with
Yeah.
overseeing this cannot agree on what needs to be done.
And who's gonna pay for it?
Yeah, and who's gonna pay for lots of things, so things are just kind of falling apart, they're very dangerous, yeah.
And again, these pictures are simply just taken by my iPhone, so it's no fancy camera or anything,
Yeah.
so.
If you take one of their guides can't take pictures in there either, in those places?
No. Now, I suppose you get a guidebook.
Mm-hmm.
You may have
They already
pictures.
have them in there.
Yes, professional photos.
Generally speaking, the reason they don't like you to take pictures even in the Museum of Modern Art or any of those things has nothing to do with the fact that you're taking an image. It's the flash of
Yeah,
those
the
cameras
damage.
deteriorate the paint or the walls or the whatever. And if you get 10 million people with one flash, it takes its toll. But that's generally the reason.
In many of these holy sites, there's people worshiping there, they're praying there all the time. So that some of them don't want that to be disrupted as well. So this is the fourth station or location. Again, an Armenian Catholic Church.
It's the same Armenian Catholic Church or different?
This is not the same, it's a different one. It's of the Our Lady of the Spasm. Supposedly, this is where Virgin Mary, Mary the mother of Jesus, met Jesus on the way to the cross. This is not mentioned in the New Testament.
So this might be one of them.
It might be, yeah.
Okay.
But you'll notice the bronze disc, you have number 4 on that disc. So this is a so-called authentic way of the cross. So, yeah. Number 5 is the Franciscan Chapel. It is here where Jesus ascends closer to Golgotha. It's where Simon of Cyrene was asked to help carry the cross with Jesus. And supposedly to the right of the doorway, I do have an enlargement. It's a place where supposedly Jesus had touched on the way to the cross. That's what tradition says. There's no biblical record of this, but so you can see the V and ST, station number 5 on the doorpost. Number 6. This is the Church of Saint Veronica, who belongs to the Little Sisters of Jesus, and probably it was Veronica's home. The Veronica supposedly wiped the dirt and blood off of Jesus' face on a linen cloth, and his face was imprinted on that cloth. Now, there's no biblical record of this, that Veronica ever met Jesus on the way, but the original of this veil is kept now at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, or the Vatican.
So this is the second one that's really not mentioned.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Station number 7 and 8. You notice you see both, look at the sphere and look at over the doorway. You see 7 and 8 in the same location. The 7th station commemorates where Jesus falls a second time due to the weight of the cross, even though Simon of Cyrene was helping him. There's a great Roman column here housed within this Franciscan chapel that marks where Jesus falls the second time. And that's where he begins to leave the old city of Jerusalem through a gate. Christians call this the 7th station, the judgment gate, because it's here where his sentencing was put on display as he was leaving the old city of Jerusalem to the way to the cross. Excuse me. The 8th station is also located here. It's where Jesus consoles with the crying women of the area of Jerusalem. There's a Latin cross with a Greek inscription. You can see the little blue insert that reads, Jesus is victorious. It's found in the Greek monastery there. It's believed to where this is the outside edge of the original wall of Jerusalem. Outside the city walls of Jerusalem in the Second Temple period. There's a column built in the door of St. Helen's Coptic Church, the monastery. This is number 9 station, where the cross site of Golgotha is very close. Jesus could probably see it at the distance. He falls a 3rd time due to the weight of the cross. The Coptics priests live very, very simplistic. Their homes are rooms probably a 1/10 the size of this room, just big enough for a bed and a sink and a stool. It's probably like a prison cell, if you think of it that way. Very, very simple, very basic.
Is that cross on there neon? Or
Yes. Yeah.
The date there's probably Constantine's mother. That would be the time that she would have been there.
Yes. True.
propane like this?
So who
Uh-huh.
puts the neon business?
I'm sorry?
Who would do the neon portion?
The Coptics, I guess.
I think Nicodemus paid for that.
You think so? Yeah, I don't know why that's there, but, now we begin to take a look at the building called, the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I want you to note that there's a small stairway right here with a doorway over here. That is commonly known as the chapel of the stripping of Jesus' garments. When he got here, his garments were removed. Going up that stairway, just outside the Church of the Holy Sepulchre entrance, main entrance. It was obviously a part of the structure of that chapel, but
No, of course, they built the chapel on top of that
Yes,
place, so it
yes.
was just dirt.
correct, yes. Yeah, what dirt or whatever, yeah. Again, every site had a church, a chapel, a monastery, a convent, a religious school, or something to protect that site. Yeah. And even the Church of the Holy Sepulchre was not there at the time of Jesus either. This is a massive building. In 4 parts: the Coptics, Greek Orthodox, Roman Catholics, and Armenians.
I have a question.
Huge facility.
I see that Dr. Google indicates that Jerusalem means, peace, but that there was a Canaanite term which means tranquility,
Okay.
Shalom. And I'm just wondering about any Canaanite roots that have been evident or may still be evident that would have been a foundation for the Hebrews and the.
Yeah, and they would use whatever solid foundation there was, a bedrock of some sort. Oh yeah, they would always build on top of.
Do we have any evidence of that you're aware of?
I am unaware of that. Ron, do you know?
Well, they go back to the time of Joshua.
Yeah.
A long time ago, yeah. And all that was destroyed by Joshua and Israel. And then the Canaanites were the Phoenicians, the same thing.
Yes,
Canaanites,
they were the boat people.
yeah.
So a lot of it was destroyed, you saying,
What?
a lot of it was destroyed?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of it would be destroyed, and then that rubble, they would build on it. It was solid.
Use the same stones to build Hugo.
You know, when we were out in the wilderness, outside the city, wilderness there doesn't mean trees. Wilderness means rock, stone, and sand, dirt. Okay? And so it's pretty solid.
Be wilderness.
Yes, very much so. Here's another view of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Again, it's in the Christian quarter of the Old City of Jerusalem. This building includes the hill of Golgotha or Calvary, the rotunda where the Holy Sepulchre is, where Jesus is laid from the tomb, from the cross to the tomb. It's where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected, all in the same building.
Did your guide talk about the fact that most fundamental Christians don't think this is the site?
Yes, we'll talk about that, because you notice at the bottom of your sheet, there's 2 locations for the resurrection. Okay, we're gonna talk about the garden too as well. Yeah. But yes, thank you, Ron, I appreciate that. So the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is maintained by Roman Catholics, Greek Orthodox, and Armenians, and the Coptics do have a portion, small one, but they're kind of an assisting process. They don't really own that, as I'm aware of. So there's plenty of chapels inside. One of the chapels is a chapel to Adam. There's a chapel to Helena. There's a chapel which would be the mother of Constantine. There's a chapel of the Finding of the Cross. And so in this building is now the last of the steps, the last 5 steps of the Stations of the Cross. The 11th station is where Jesus is nailed to the cross. At the base of this beautiful picture is where supposedly Jesus is nailed to the cross, in the sight of his mother. This holy site is guarded by and maintained by the Roman Catholics. When you're in this Church of the Holy Sepulchre, they really don't want you to take many pictures.
Yeah, I'm sure that's
So,
because of paint on that.
Yeah. so I was able to take this one and next to it, by the fact, these women their backside is facing what you just saw. We're gonna climb a few steps into where Jesus was nailed, from nailing of the cross to being hung on the cross. We climb just a few steps to Golgotha. Now here's where definitely you were not to take a picture. Big no-no. This is the best I could get. This is very blurry, but this is where the Greek Orthodox chapel where Jesus dies on the cross. The Greek altar, I apologize again for the poor photo, is adorned by the English or the Eastern style stands over the rock of Calvary. It's over this place where the 3 crosses where Christ and the 2 thieves were erected in that very first Good Friday.
So this is high up somehow, I mean, is it a mount?
It is a little bit of a mound. We had about 3-4 steps to go up
Oh, that's all.
to that.
I thought it was like.
Now again,
That's supposed to be.
no, remember, John, on the way to Golgotha, it's an incline. Those steps were not there. Let me go back.
There's just a pathway going up a hill.
Those steps were not there. It was just a gradual incline all the way up. So Golgotha would have been a fairly high point. It would be outside the city. It would never be in the city. You don't have death in the city.
So it wasn't like the last temptation of Christ where it's up on this mound looking down in the city.
Well, it might have been, because remember that you've got 4,000 years worth of rubble that's being built on, and the western wall that you were just looking at is the top, but that wall extends 225 feet below what you're looking at.
Really?
So when you leave the city, and the Golden Gates that you have now, the original Golden Gates are 4 or 5 stories, 6 maybe, I can't remember the distance, but those are the new Golden Gates. The real Golden Gates are below that. So when you left the city, you were at this level and you walked up this level. Now even though you're going up a slight incline, you're pretty much level, because they've had 4,000 years worth of rubble that they built on.
Yeah.
What did you say, 220?
225 feet from the original floor of
Not original, but the
The-
2,000-year-old.
the 2,000-year-old.
Correct.
And you're going up 225 feet.
Because again, that you build on top of civilizations.
Yeah.
And remember, they destroyed the temple, and so that all that debris came in.
Yeah, when you see the alternate Golgotha, then you'll see a different picture about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the high altar in the Greek chapel is flanked on both sides with pillars, but the altar below where that woman is bowing her head, you see the silver ring in there, is the actual location of where the cross of Jesus was placed.
Silver ring.
In the picture of the side.
On the left side, bottom.
Oh,
You can't really see it, it's back here, but this is what it looks like.
okay.
Now, is this disputed, or does everybody pretty much say this is where it is?
Yeah.
No, it's very much disputed by fundamental Christians. They
Oh, yeah,
say,
sure it is.
yeah, this is not it at all.
Well, you know, history
And you see the
just
alternative
rolls
is
over,
the-
and this person says this thing, and this person said, and here's the evidence.
Well, Helen was the one who was Constantine's mother. Now, she was 450 years, I think, post crucifixion,
Yeah.
wasn't she?
Well, Constantine was
Constantine
around
was-
about 300 AD. So
Yeah.
she was just
306 to
around
337.
300,
Yeah, so it was, and so she's going looking for these things, and this is where depends on your perspective, but she's going up and she's saying, where was the cross? And some guy says, here. That's 450 years later, so 450 years of tradition of where things were are there. So, you know, it is accepted. This is the spot.
Right.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, on either sides of that high altar, you see the channels and the slots used to erect the 3 crosses. That's why they feel this was the site.
Used for what, three crosses?
Well, for hanging the cross, you gotta have slides to get that thing up. You just can't pick them up and think it's way too heavy.
Well, there were holes that they dropped this cross into.
Yes,
so they
but
had
there were
to-
slides to get it into the hole.
You can
So
imagine.
these slots on both sides of the high altar is where the thieves are, and underneath the altar is the slot where Jesus' cross is.
So these were permanent things, this was always where they typically had crucifixion, because it was
That would be my assumption.
ready-made for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. I mean, that, along that road,
Yeah.
it was a road that were plenty of crucifixions to remind the people that if you don't follow the Roman rule, this was gonna happen to you. So they were used as examples. If you've seen a lot of the Star Wars stuff, you see stormtrooper helmets in a lot of the communities. No, that's, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was-
Same idea.
That was typical in England also, on the London Bridge, is that they would take criminals and put their heads on a pike.
Yeah.
And you would have to pass by those to get into the city center.
We did this with slave escapes, yeah,
Yeah.
rebellions in this country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
examples.
Also, when you go below the altar, you see exactly below where Jesus' cross was placed. You remember there was an earthquake that took place?
Yes.
They think that this is the fusion underneath the cross. You see the crack right there? So it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
13th station. Jesus is good and dead, and they take him off the cross, and they lay him on a slab to prepare the body. Like I says, Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus were going to prepare the body before the body was put in the tomb. And so this is the stone, not the original one, I'll talk to you in a minute, but this is the stone that represents where Jesus' body was laid as he was being anointed. The original stone, I don't know if it still exists, but this stone was put in place back in 1810. So it isn't that old a stone. I do know, however, that if the stone was well known of, that it probably was seriously worn. Have you ever been to the Vatican? St. Peter's marble or stone image. His feet are rubbed almost where there aren't much feet left because, wear and tear, it wears out. And so it could be why the original one isn't here either, because of that.
We went to an old high school and it had marble stairs. And from 100 years of use, they all had tracks
Yeah.
where people walked up and down the stairs.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And interesting, people would put their candles, lay their candles. You can see some of them,
Yeah.
like here, these are candles. And they would worship, or at least pray, I should say, on the stone, put their foreheads on the stone. And these candles were here because she was going to take those candles home, and those were going to be her blessing candles because they touched the rock of Jesus was being anointed. Yes. Very moving time. Above the stone of atonement, or anointment, I mean, this was made, this mosaic was made for the Pope's trip to Jerusalem and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre back in 1990. So this is fairly recent, but you can see Jesus' death in the far distance, where he was laid to be anointed, and then he was going to be placed in the tomb. So this is a way in which, for those who visit and don't know much about Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, this is a good illustration to help them to see this is what happened. Now we start the 14th station. We're in the rotunda. They built things around the site, not only in this portion, which we'll see closer, the actual site of Jesus' body, but they built then additional outer sites, buildings to protect the inner building. Okay, so that's why it's kind of a double layer. Originally, it was a cave hewn out of rock, and then the rotunda was built over it. Jesus' burial and resurrection There's a mini chapel inside, we'll show you in a second. It was erected by the Crusaders, dated back to the time of Constantine the Great. Again, his mother was very important in the Christian faith.
And what part of that was erected by the Crusaders?
The original portion.
Original little,
Yeah, this, this portion here.
Yeah.
And I'll show you the next one over too, the next picture. This is the entrance of the Holy Sepulchre. There's a lot of candles, lots of candlesticks and lamps.
You haven't moved.
I'm sorry?
The picture didn't move.
Oh,
Do they have concern about soot building up on all of these, interior? All these candles and
come on.
scents?
Not worried about flashbulbs. Yeah.
You see the entrance yet?
No.
Huh. Well, we'll have to skip that one. In the entrance, there's a lot of candles and candlesticks. Soot, yes. Because of the various Christian denominations and traditions, they have candles. In the first room of the Holy Sepulchre is a chapel of the angel. This is where they believe that Mary Magdalene visited the grave, saw the angel on that site. So does that show? Okay, well that shows okay. Supposedly the body is in a marble slab, and it was resurrected, and that's why you'll see above this metal slab, marble slab, is where Jesus, there's signs of his so-called resurrection. The marble slab was placed back in 1555, so it's obviously not the original. And then they put a wooden top over it. See this wooden top here. All these candelabras, or candle stands, 42 of them. They burn night and day. 42 stand for 13 from each of the Latin, Greek Orthodox, and Armenians, and there's 4 for Coptics. So why the numbers? I guess I didn't look. I didn't study, I don't know.
Even
Do you
though,
know what that says? Like, what is that? What does that say
on the sign.
on the sign? Do you know?
Well, see the X, that's the first letter of Christ's name, Christos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
See, when you look at Greek letters, that's Christ's name. Often you miss it with Xmas, really means Christ's first name.
Yes.
Yeah. So we think it's eliminating Christ, but really Christos, I can't see the second letter,
So it's just something
but maybe Jesus.
okay, thank
but
you.
even though the Muslims consider Jesus to be a prophet, do they have any role or place in any of these ceremonial and religious
Not
sites?
here. This is the Christian section of Jerusalem. So, yeah.
They have like complete control of Bethlehem. The Muslims control that entire area. That's why our guy was Jewish, couldn't go there.
Mhm.
She had to get out of the bus and somebody else had
Yes,
to come on
yes.
and take over.
Mhm.
Amazing.
So you need permission to get on the.
There's a better picture. Good, we're back on. A better picture of the Holy Sepulchre. And you see all the candelabras outside as well.